Happy New Year. We are on the 9th of 2026, January 2026. You having just jumped off the plane at 2 o'clock in the morning this morning and me jumping off the plane yesterday at 6 a.m., I think we have some thoughts that we'd like to share. So welcome to the China EVs and More podcast, everyone. In the next hour or so, my co-host Lei Sheng and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. And yes, there was some news from the Chinese EV makers coming out of Las Vegas at CES. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. We ask that you smash those subscribe and like buttons so you don't miss anything from us in the future and help us get the word out about this podcast to others. My name is Tu Lee. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, a jet-lagged and tired Lei, but a very, let's say, a very lot to say, Lei. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, always CES, starting out the year with CES is a fantastic event to really see the Chinese, right? Because the Western audience don't usually get the experience, but that's what CES is all about. Yes, I know we're doing this for 5 years, still having some kinks, but that's fun, right? I mean, it's all the spontaneity that make this fun. Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Review, and this is episode 233. I think I got count right.
Are you sure?
233. Yeah, last episode was 232. So I just came back this morning. Literally, I got home at 2:30. Flight was delayed a little bit. So I think things are still fresh. I'm sure it's the same for you. You and I, we attended different events. We attended same events. Yeah, tell you what, it was.
So for the audience, Lei, we go intending to meet up here and there, but we basically have different itineraries. But then we circle back, share our thoughts, and sometimes there's overlap with some of the events that we do. But this particular time, you and I didn't really go to that many events together. So we have a lot of different things to talk about, you and I. And I think I want to hear about your experience at CES, and I'll tell you about mine.
Yeah, which is complementary, right? Mm-hmm. That was my 9th, and it was your 2nd, right, from last year. And my first was 10 years ago. So I think I have a perspective, I think looking back, where CES is kind of a place where it's about, I think it certainly is about life and death of companies. Two classic examples. Faraday Future, I attended the Faraday Future, they held a stockholder event. 10 years ago, Faraday Future announced their FF01 concept at CES. And 10 years later, they're still around. Between that time, companies have died that were at CES. Titan, who else? WM Motor, they were actually signed an agreement with Baidu, I think in 2018. Hi-Fi, right? Between that time, and FFS still around. YTJ is still...
前途.
Yeah, is still working his butt off, right? And trying to pay off his debt and go back to China. He said it himself, right? He posts videos on social about how much he wants to go back.
He's never going to be able to go back.
Yeah, I mean, but...
He burned too many bridges.
Yeah. But, you and I have a lot of friends over at FF. So silently, we're supporting, but at the same time, we need to be, honest and say, how long do they continue, or what's the future? They did announce some targets, 400,000 to 500,000 units by 2030, cumulatively. Of the funny thing.
Well, they showed off a car with a big digital face.
Yeah, the funny thing was the same car was on display at the Great Wall Motor booth. Yeah, that's the MPV is called the Super One, and then they're also having the FX4, the RAV4, kind of the sized vehicles coming. But it's all drawing, what do you call it? In Chinese, it's called drawing a pie, right? And they're trying to fill a pie. But, they're still around.
It's because the vehicles would come from China as
Yeah.
of right now. There's no
Although,
plans or no announcements to manufacture outside of China for
although Great Wall Motor has been mum about, they're basically like, we haven't officially signed any deal with them. How that working out, they don't know. But
well,
yeah,
YT Jia is his own hype man.
yeah.
And so credit to the team for being able to continue to be in the conversation, whether all the things he says is true or not, and or whether the forecasts and expectations are realistic. 400,000 by 2030 is an impossible task for him because a lot of the technology has moved by Faraday Future right now, and they really have no budget to dig deep into R&D to improve in any significant way, as far as I know.
No, yeah, I mean, just because of, like I said, we have some common people that work there that have worked there since the very beginning. There must be some kind of a pull or a culture that's sticking them together, right? For the good or the bad. And we talk about NIO, we talk about these smart EV startups. We want them to be successful. And, it's also holds true for FF, although, it's in God's hands, I'd say, right? So that's one storylines, I think, from CES. And then, speaking of the Chinese, right? So Geely Auto and Great Wall Motor were the two officially exhibiting Chinese automakers. And
there were no legacy OEMs that had any exhibits, although Ford did have
BMW, which always have
enough.
their own kind of the spot at CES, right? But other than that, right, you're right. There's no, right, GM, Ford, no. I mean, a lot of
we can talk about this in a second, Lay, but Ford did have an event. Doug Field had made some announcements, almost like a mini Rivian AI day, but let's continue talking about the show before we deep dive into any of the particular subjects.
Well, I think for Geely Auto and Great Wall Motor, I think it would, for me, if I looked at it, it wasn't about their cars. I think for the American audience or the Western audience, they very much obviously will be interested to see and touch and feel Chinese cars for the first time, right? Both of them announced their kind of what you call it, smartification, ADAS, AI, right? I posted something, right?
Let's back this out. EVs were not the theme anymore. Everywhere you looked, there were smart glasses and robots.
It was
there were drones and eVTOL. So yeah, AI kind of as the large theme, but Hyundai Motor Group, no vehicles shown at all. It was all about their acquisition of Boston Dynamics and how they're going to use those robots, not only to help with their own manufacturing, but they're going to sell these robots as a subscription service to other manufacturers in the future. So I just wanted to throw out the large themes. There wasn't about cars anymore. And so, although there were car companies doing non-car things.
Yeah, sure. So I was saying the logo or the message that Geely Auto put up on their booth was AI everything and AI everywhere. Right? It's kind of cheesy, but that's how it felt like if you go to CES. Every booth, everybody was talking about AI something. And at the press conference, right, we both went to, they announced this GASD. It's called the Geely Afari Self-Driving, which is kind of the FSD competitor. And then they announced the EVA Personal AI Assistant. Right? So these were the themes. Sure, the cars that carry them. Great Wall Motor, they announced their VLA, the kind of the advanced ADAS. What NVIDIA's Jensen Huang announced, right, their El Pameo, thinking and reasoning VLA model for Mercedes that's going to launch on the Mercedes. The autonomous driving part of it, right? I think that was a major theme.
Actually, one thing that was really striking that I don't think got picked up by media is that Lenovo rented out the Sphere for
I went
their
to
keynote.
that.
And they had every CEO of the chip
Yep.
makers on stage together. So I didn't make it. I don't, those lines are way too long to get a ticket. And so
Yeah.
I just wasn't going to
For
stand in line.
CES for me is really about experience. So I try to maximize my time there of these different experiences to kind of feel the branding of the companies and the products. So Lenovo, yeah, they had Jensen Huang, they had Lisa Su, they had Christian Amman, Qualcomm, they had Li Butan, right, the new CEO of Intel, the FIFA president. They announced their computer, personal electronics products, phones, Motorola. They announced quite a few Motorola phones, believe it or not, right? And I hear that it's in the tens of millions of dollars to hold an event like that. So they spent big money on that.
Well, who ended the show? Gwen Stefani.
I didn't
That
see
was it.
that because I went to the STV Awards, which we can talk a little bit about.
Okay, yeah, okay, because Gwen Stefani, I was told. So I had a friend who is working with Intel who is giving me play-by-play as I'm at another event myself. But yeah, and then so let me tell you about my Geely Auto experience because I
Right,
did
you went to
not make their press
right.
conference.
You went to
So
the right.
we actually crashed a party that Geely had. They had, was
All
it
right.
Sunday night? Was it Sunday night?
Sunday.
It was Sunday night. Yeah, because Monday was the drive-in ride. So Geely Auto came in actually a very, very big way. They rented the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, brought about 10, 15 cars from Mexico, Lincoln Co., Geely, and Zeekr vehicles, Exxon, the Galaxy that was there. And they brought a gaggle of journalists to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I had heard about and I'd gotten invited secondhand to a dinner that they were hosting at CES in Mandalay Bay on Sunday night. And that's when I invited you and Joe White. And
And
then,
Mike, yeah.
yeah, and we sat down and had dinner. Yeah, thank you to Mike Novak, the car geek, Mike the car geek, for sending me over that connection. And then, the next day, I wasn't going to make it to the press conference, the 4 p.m. press conference on Monday. So I decided I wanted to say hi to Ash and Kevin and those guys because Ash Sutcliffe had flown in from Hangzhou. He's an old friend, Lao Pengyo of ours, big fan of Ash. And, I'm standing there right next to John McElroy. Story behind the story, because why Western media is not really picking this up and writing big stories about this, with the exception of one or two, including Ryan Felton from the Wall Street Journal. There is an article about Geely making an announcement that within the next 36 months, they will be in the U.S. market. So I'm standing next to John McElroy because he's the one that got the scoop. And he's like, I'm going to go interview Ash. And I go, cool, man. Go ahead. And then he was like, where should I do it at? And there was a Lincoln Co. car. So I was like, go do it in the car. So I see, so Ash and John go in the car and I see John doing this. So I take a couple snaps of John and Ash in the vehicle. And then he jumps out like 15, 20 minutes later. He's going, I got a scoop. And, gotta love John McElroy because he was like a big kid. He was so excited and I was so pumped for him. And then we took a bus ride back to downtown Las Vegas and he was smiling. Oh, well, in between the moments he was sending that video to his son to post, and the big scoop was that Geely is coming to the United States. So again, what are your thoughts on Ash making that public declaration? Because this is an announcement. It's a formal announcement because he is the head of Geely Holdings
Group, ZGH, as we say. They just announced their global group-wide, wider group sales number. It was over 4 million units, right? Counting the Volvo cars, counting the Polestars and everybody else, Lotus, right? It's been 20 years since Geely exhibited at Detroit Auto Show, if you remember. after 20 years to hear them announce this, I don't think it's surprising, right? The Chinese have been wanting to come since Geely exhibited there, maybe even further back. And it's just a matter of how, right? It's just a matter of from where. You said there were Mexico license plates. Well, there's always ways to get around things. So no, I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, in a way, right? I also saw some headlines about somebody was saying, was it Wall Street Journal, that the only thing that you can experience a Chinese cars through the Zeekr RT, which has been renamed the Oh-Hi from Waymo, right?
Oh, it was always the Oh-Hi, but yeah, but
now
most Western people know it as the Waymo Robovan.
Yeah, now obviously with him announcing that, there's more than one way that you can experience the Chinese cars, right?
So yeah, and then really quickly, we jump on a bus and then we go to the Hyundai press event, and all the usual suspects that you and I know from a journalism standpoint. I was sitting next to John McElroy and Patrick George at the Hyundai Motor Group event, and we knew the theme was robotics, but it started out with a bunch of Boston Dynamics robots doing a synchronized dance. The entire time, there was always a Boston Dynamics representative, and then there's a Hyundai Motor Group executive talking together about all of the news for the robots and their plan to build 30,000 a year by 2030, have a training facility for the robots, and then creating a subscription service that they'll do that they'll sell. They'll maintain the robots and service the robots, create OTAs for the robots. And so there seems to be a very, very comprehensive plan for Hyundai's acquisition of Boston Dynamics. So I applaud that. And we can't help but think about Optimus with Tesla. What are their plans for it? Because they're not really talking, but I think they're more and more, as time goes by, there are more cynics with Elon and Tesla's plans because they seem to be late on every announcement that they make.
Well, he said, I think on an earnings call, that they want to do millions and millions of Optimuses by a certain timeline, right? So I think maybe from the other way to look at this is, if you're from the traditional auto industry, and if you're not expanding into these new realms, you're probably not relevant, or you right? Like FF, YT, he announced they're going to go into the embodied AI robotics.
Of course they are.
Mobileye purchased Manti Robotics for $900 million. XPeng is obviously doing humanoid robots. Neo has kind of talked about it. I think Li Bin, he mentioned something recently, and he said, we still want to be focusing on what we're doing. There's something. I think it's CES is where you feel that the industries, the borderlines are being blurred, because you have to expand the horizon. When you cover when we and other people cover the auto industry, it does not mean the four wheels anymore. I think that's.
Well, let's say for the companies that are really trying to redefine, at least in the public sphere, of who they are becoming, I think it's important to kind of specify that they're trying to be like Tesla and saying, you know what, we're evolving. And this is to show you a press event. And so maybe we jump into the Ford event that I went to 2 days ago. 2 days ago. Because
didn't they
so
announce
there was
eyes off? Level 3 eyes off thing?
So yeah, I forget the names of the individuals, but it started out with Doug Field. It was at like one of the big breakout rooms, and the theme was like great minds or something like that. And Ford had 4 total executives, one Doug Field and 3 others. One was Jay Park, who's the head of their interactive design, I think. And all of these guys are out of their California, Long Beach office. And so the big announcements from Ford were that they were launching an AI assistant via a Ford app, but it's going to be integrated into the vehicle. So that's a big deal. I didn't really hear about dates, but I did record it. So what I'll try to do is post it on YouTube when I'm able to. The second big announcement was that they were doing level 3 by 2028, which matches GM. And the third thing was that they were going to launch level 3 autonomy or intelligent driving, and the underlying theme here was that they're doing everything in-house. The third big announcement was that one of their leadership brought out a compute module, and they said they were doing all of the development for that themselves. At the end, Doug sat down with Ed Lowe, friend of the show, Ed Lowe.
Yeah, I met him.
Ed asked Doug if the silicon was going to be designed in-house. Doug punted on that answer, but if I had to summarize it, I would say it's like a quick version of Rivian's AI Day. So I think those were the three big announcements, and it was an opportunity to hear from some of the non-traditional leadership from Ford, the guys that aren't in Dearborn. So I think that was a really positive move from Ford, because I just really, they hammered home that we're doing everything in-house, and that Doug Field, again, Doug should get some respect because he's ex-Tesla, ex-Apple guy. And it's not like he was only there for a year or at either place. He was there for quite a while. And I think he's the guy that is a major component of the Model 3 launch. So he understands how to launch small electric vehicles. Very bullish on the UEV, which is being developed out of Long Beach. He did say that Dearborn is contributing quite a bit. So there's a collaboration going on between the Ford entities in Long Beach and then in Dearborn. So I took all of this as a really positive thing, that they're really starting to communicate openly about where they want to go.
Well, all this going on, as I think we talked about the EV penetration being possibly down in the US this year from last year. I think there were some reports about that as well. And then, speaking of that low, right? I met him at the SDV Awards, which NIO and Xiaomi, two of their people, won the Innovation Award Pioneer categories. Not surprising, again. I was standing with Emma next to me. And when it was announced, right, it's like...
She didn't know.
No. But they asked people to come over, right, just in case, who won. Like... touching that award is heavy, right? Figuratively and literally. Xiaomi, this guy who worked at BMW.
Who else was in the category, or did they just?
A bunch of Qualcomm, Tesla, the guy, I forget his name, or it's Wami or something. He wasn't there, but quite a few people from Qualcomm, Tesla, Ford, and GM. I think some of them won something. Also,
but they didn't say who NIO beat to get that award.
No.
Okay.
No. Just that NIO and Xiaomi won two of the Pioneer Awards. And it was shared with some others. So I saw Marcus Schaefer, the former CTO of Mercedes, and Austin Russell. They started a company together called Russell AI Labs. And the funny thing is, for me, that's went through CES before. 2 years ago, Mercedes and Luminar were standing together, right? Along with Polestar CEO Thomas Ingenlath. And
who's no longer there.
2 years later, these three people, they all have something new. Now Thomas Ingenlath is the new chief designer of Volvo Cars. He went back to his old job of designing. This was just announced like 2 days ago. So within 2 years, imagine how the industry changed and how people change. That, we can't talk about CES without talking about LiDAR. We always talk about LiDAR because the sheer amount of volumes that the top LiDAR players from China, right, they have shipped. I think we've seen some numbers, humongous numbers, which is partially the reason that the Luminar couldn't compete. You got to scale, you got to manufacture. hence their bankruptcy. I think that's another kind of the storyline of these, what do you call it?
Well, Hyundai is now talking about shipping 4 million units a year kind of thing.
And that's their
So,
capacity.
yeah.
So double their production output capacity. RoboSense, as we know, right, they're not making it official. Most likely the supplier to Rivian. And speaking of, the other good, I think better story was the Black Sesame Huashan A2000 getting the U.S. approval, which is we're quite positive for them.
So
it's not that easy.
Ironically, Lei, and I told you this earlier, I was sitting right next to Pepe, who is the head of North America for RoboSense. He lives here in Michigan. Great guy. And so talk to him.
Yeah, just one thing. I talked to him, and he's like, "Damn, these stories about robots. You know, they don't mention us. We have a robot. We have a delivery guy robot. You know, booth." It's like, you guys want to talk about it?
Well, so I'm standing at the Geely booth, just outside the Geely booth, talking to a couple of friends, and one of the Neolix PR women, she didn't work for Neolix. I think she runs her own agency, but she kind of mentioned, hey, you should come to the Neolix booth because we have an autonomous delivery van, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah. So I think she's kind of eavesdropping on our conversation. Me and my friends are talking about autonomous vehicles. And then, the other thing too, Tensor had a big presence at CES. I mean,
yeah, Tensor.
You walk into where there's several doors into the West Hall, but you walk into the West Hall at this one particular entrance, and to the right is the Tensor booth, and you can't miss it because that vehicle is huge, right?
Yeah, it's
a big vehicle.
I did drop by and check it out. Supposedly, this was some kind of an AI designed vehicle. The way its form factor, the way it was actually where the sensors are is, I hear it's because of AI design. And the founder is the former
Professor X.
Professor X, yeah, he's well known to those who know the AV industry. His stature is very small. He's kind of like a Stella Lee type of height. I mean, it's a new, different kind of business model, but I don't know if it's going to work.
I'd gone to, you and I, we've been to some AutoX press events in China, so pretty familiar with Professor X. And I'd mentioned this in the previous China EVs and more, but the Tensor Auto is AutoX rebranded with the vehicle. Tensor Auto is, I guess, technically an American company because he opened an office in the US in San Jose, I want to say. And that vehicle, it's been announced that VinFast is going to be producing that vehicle. Yep. Now, I guess they're going to produce it in Vietnam and then ship it over. Again, to your point, pretty interesting, but seems like a pretty challenging to go from one prototype vehicle that you put on CES stage to mass producing robotaxis to compete with Waymo, Tesla, Cruise, and Zoox and Nuro.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, also we should talk about Dreamy a little bit. I bumped into Nick Torque, the head of PR for Lucid, who was at the Dreamy booth. And so he shared, I said, I just recently bought a Dreamy Kovac, the robot. And he said, oh, I have two. I don't know what he was doing there, but I kind of had to run and just said hi to him. And then,
dude, he's doing, some he's just studying up. So I actually went to, so Nick and I are pretty good buddies. I went to their event, the Uber event that announced the Neuro Lucid partnership. And Nick was there with a few other people that I knew. So it was kind of partying there. It was at the Fontainebleau. Fontainebleau is an amazing hotel, by the way.
Yeah.
Super nice hotel.
Yeah. That's where the SPV award was. They had this.
Was how many people were at the? I wanted to go, but I was like triple booked.
It's quite packed.
Okay, I was because I had told Ed I wanted to go because I bumped into Ed Lowe And he was like, you should come. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to try to make it, but
Yeah, CES,
wasn't
there's
able
too
to.
many things going on, everything, everywhere at the same time, right? So you
And
pick your battle.
they're either at the Mandalay Bay or they're at, Fontainebleau or at the convention hall. And actually getting around it takes time.
It
It's not
takes,
super far, but it takes
I
time.
think if you're like me, I'd say I probably a pro by now, you have to know your way around, and form of transportation is very important. So I use the monorail as much as possible. And really, if you're in a hurry, there's no way you can do it through Uber or Lyft. So yeah, Uber, Neural, and Lucid, they're calling it the world's most luxurious robotaxi, right?
Yeah. Well, and
And then,
this leads into the baby Gravity probably being the more affordable
yeah,
one. And you would think of Uber or you would think of this as like an Uber Black type of service.
yeah. And then speaking of this luxury, at the same time, I was at the Geely booth getting a coffee and hearing some conversations. The Geely Galaxy M9 is below $30,000 for that size of a vehicle. And the jarring thing is, you think back to 2016 when Mary Barra announced the Bolt, and she said it was 200-mile range, 30,000 EV. 10 years later, we still don't have something like that, but we have the M9, a bigger vehicle. Obviously, if they were to come to the US, I don't know if this is going to sell at the $30,000 level, but still, right?
It won't. It's not I think it'll be tough for even the Chinese EV makers to really price something. BYD maybe with the Seagull or something like that, but
There were a couple of BYD vehicles at the show. If you walk the show,
well, there
extensive.
was a U7 at the Caresoft booth too.
Yep,
I was
U7
talking to the
and then
Caresoft guys, and they were like, "Come to the booth, check it out." I mean, I'm like, dude,
they showed
I've checked it out before.
the US U7 at the IAA in Munich. There was a BYD Han at the Cerence booth, and then there was a Denza D9 at one of their partners' booth where I'll post a video where I think they were Americans singing karaoke in the Denza D. Yeah, I mean, it's just random things that make you laugh, right? And then talk about Lenovo spending big money on the Sphere. Guess who was the best branding at CES this year?
Insta.
The 360. They took over with their yellow bags.
I
I,
have one.
I have one as well, right? So I hear
Did you
they
get a Geely bag? Did you get a
no, I
Geely
didn't
bag?
get a TV
I got a
bag.
Geely bag.
I hear they
Wait, hey, you have to ping that woman so we can get our jackets.
I should talk to the Zika people. Yeah. No, they didn't
Yeah,
have it at the
because
press conference. I asked, they
well,
didn't have it.
she said she was going to get it for us. But anyways, so let's do this. Summarize. You kind of already did this at the beginning, but summarize CES in your eyes for the audience.
Well, I mean, I post something on LinkedIn. I put a riddle. I said, AI everything, AI everywhere. Is it me or is it a dream me? Right? Because that's how everything was about AI. And
The one, oh, go ahead.
I think for the autonomous driving, I should mention Mobileye, Professor Shasha's press conference. I went to that one. I really like him for the way he shares his perspectives and the way he kind of articulates the future of the autonomous driving. He posted a slide of what autonomous driving in the 20s will look like. I think that was a great slide showing really the three tracks, right? The level 2 plus assisted driving becomes standard on all vehicles in the 2030s. There's the consumer level 3, level 4, something that you can buy, but with higher levels of automation, which Ford talked about, right? The ISOF, GM talked about, Xpeng talks about. And then there's a third track is the driverless robotaxis. That's currently the three tracks of autonomous driving in the 20s. So I think it's a great way to, at a very high level, on what AV is.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it. And he basically echoed what Ola said at the pre-show at the Media Live the day before, the 3 tracks. And yeah, and I think Jensen also, he mentioned something about what the Alpha Male is in respect to the FSD. He still credits Elon and Tesla for what they have done, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. NVIDIA
Right?
had announced the driving, their own, right.
That's going on to the Mercedes CLA outside of China. So that was a big takeaway.
So
and then
if I
just
had to,
lastly, new brands are still emerging. Dreamy, they had 2 different brands. At the Nebula Next.
I'm going to be honest with you. Lei. I think Dreamy is one of those, they got some provincial money, so they're just trying to throw stuff out there.
Yeah, but,
I don't know, because you go to the Dreamy booth, it's one of the biggest booths at CES. They have Insta 360 style cameras. They have vacuum cleaners. They have everything. And
sound bars.
It was an enormous booth. And I just don't know how they realistically are able to do all. So let's say they can, the vacuums are great. I was told, I don't have one, but the vacuums are great.
I have a robot, cleaning robot, so.
Yeah, but I just don't know. They seem to be like they're trying to follow in the footsteps of Dyson, but take that one step further and actually get the car to production.
Yeah, the only I hear was that the Nebula Next is the one they want to produce China, whereas the Cosmera, if you talk to the Cosmera people, you can sense that they don't want to be associated with Dreamy.
Mm-hmm.
The Cosmera, the 2 supercars, they want to produce that, and I think they've scouted Germany being one, right? Berlin, this was reported. So they actually have 2 different brands. I mean,
and let me really, there's 1 or 2 questions here, so let me summarize. With the politics of China and the U.S. the way it is, it's still not deterring any of the Chinese brands from showing off their wares in the United States, for sure. The 2 languages that I heard the most outside of English were Korean and Mandarin. And, I think, in my opinion, in these parts, meaning the Midwest and Michigan, Hyundai's announcement and press event that only had robots, I think that is an enormous shift for the company, because they're firing on all cylinders as an automotive group, with the exception of the China market. You and I both own Hyundais. And so I think that has implications. And my initial thought was, man, the UAW is pretty scared, should be pretty scared. But then I was talking to Colin, I forget his last name, but he's the head of MEMA, which is the tier 1 supplier advocacy group. And, he did mention a statistic that said that, there are a lot of supplier jobs that are unfilled. So the robots could really just help fill some of those jobs. But again, the largest themes were, to your point, AI, but drilled down a little bit further, it was all about robots. And then if we think about LiDAR, we think about all these sensors and things like that. It plays right into the robotics part of it. The last thing I'll say is the Tensor Auto vehicle, it goes from robotaxi to you drive yourself within like 30 or 40 seconds, meaning that the steering wheel comes out of the dashboard. And so the theme, and I had heard this from Alex Roy a few times, who is the host. The Autonocast party is an Alex Roy, Ed Niedermeyer, and Kirsten Korsick party every year. I think it's in his 9th year this year. It was a ton of fun. Knew a bunch of people. Met what's his name? Dave. Who's the guy that drove his Model 3 from California to Florida?
I mentioned that, I met him and took him to check out the Neo ET9.
Yeah, so
his name is David Moss.
David Moss, that's right.
Yeah.
So I got to meet him and talk to him for a while. And good dude. He's a LiDAR salesman.
Yeah, exactly. He's based in Seattle, and first time sitting in a Chinese car of any kind.
So what he did was he zero interventions from California to Florida.
11.
So pretty impressive. And we talk about all of the intelligent driving coming out of China. FSD is an amazing tool for sure. The reservations I have is not that it's not innovative. The reservations I have is that it is not as safe as human drivers yet. And that's from a statistics standpoint.
Yeah, not
okay?
that at that point yet, I guess.
And so, go ahead.
No, and then I think we covered a lot in 45 minutes. The storylines, the companies, the people.
Did you hear the donut motor or donut labs announcement?
That was, I think, the only thing that we didn't mention was this Finnish company supplying a solid state battery, 400 watt hour per kilogram energy density, which is at least twice as what's on the market for the LFPs.
So
usually, yeah.
Hold on. So SPX, who's a loyal watcher and participant. So thanks again. Happy New Year, SPX. He writes, one thing seemed to be out of nowhere. What's your take on the donut lab? If something like this gets commercialized, how would it change the landscape of the industry? This is a pretty great question, but I'll let you answer it first, Lei.
Well, I think the application, first of all, they were showing this pouch, right? And then they were showing this kind of the module. They put 3 of these modules into the Verge motorcycle. So I think the application itself for the motorcycle is something that may be easier, I'm thinking, rather than putting in a car. Whereas a motorcycle, you don't need that long of a range anyways, right? My understanding. So maybe the way they did it is start out with these more simpler applications. The other one was, I did talk to some of the people at the booth, but, I asked them what's the secret sauce, and they're not saying. But they did confirm that they're starting production this year and putting on the motorcycles. But again,
Yes.
what kind of volumes are we talking about? What kind of a scale? I'd imagine it's still very low. It's not like what OLED is, right? The solid state batteries, it looks like they're not fiction anymore, science fiction anymore. But you still take a grain of salt with what's being said, right?
So SPX does that. So to me, everybody I talk to, or a lot of people I talk to in some of the chats that I'm in, are poo-pooing it. They're very skeptical, which is fair. But solid state, if they can commercialize it within the next 3 or 4 years, it might render all that capacity in China moot, it should scare the heck out of CATL and BYD because they have massive capacity. So the implications are enormous. And now that Donut Labs has thrown that massive bomb out there, you better believe that these battery companies, whether it's LG, SK, CATL, BYD, they're going to throw more resources at this because Donut Labs could corner the market. Whether they get investment to manufacture on their own or whether they generate revenues through licensing, that remains to be seen. But this is, I don't use that game changer description very often, but this would be a game changer. And, strength of go ahead.
No, I mean, do they become someone like our next energy, or do they become a breakout sensation?
Well,
we don't know at this point. I think there's certainly a little bit of hype, right, as you alluded. But
and the thing is, if they're putting it on a motorcycle, the durability needs to be there, like automotive grade type of durability. And so it's not like this consumer product that consumes zero energy. It's going to be something that a person relies on to life.
It's actually one of the first new products we saw at the CES unveiled. And we didn't think of it as something until later the headlines came out, right, of the Donut Labs.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You, me, and Joe walked through Unveiled. Yeah. And so I just kind of passed by because I saw the e-motor thing and I'd seen that announcement before. The solid state battery, again, what everybody wants to do in order to not rely so heavily on the Chinese LFP chemistry or the LFP chemistry that China dominates in manufacturing. They want to leapfrog. Okay, they don't want to evolve. That's why GM and Ford are betting big on LMR. But Donut Labs could become a massive, massive company because the implications of batteries are in pretty much every portable consumer good. And I'm talking drones, I'm talking autonomous vehicles, delivery vans, you name it.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is they want to give the Chinese a little bit of their own medicine, right? That's kind of yeah.
And that would really, really throw China Battery Inc. into a loop for sure.
But I'm sure, I mean, the CATLs, the BYDs, they're ready. I have no doubt.
No, I think, if this was to happen, I think they'd feel like they're caught flat-footed.
The thing about Donut Labs, they're not only doing the solid-state battery, they have in-wheel motor solutions.
Yeah, the e-motor, yeah.
Yeah, e-drives, right?
Which is also a significant game changer because this is not an evolution of an e-motor. This is a revolution, which is kind of thinking about things differently. Everyone, what we thought was going to be a 20, 30-minute CES update ended up being an
It never is a quick recap.
So, Happy New Year, everyone, and thanks for joining our first episode of 2026.
Second.
We should be... Is this our second?
Yeah, we did one on the January 2nd.
On the 2nd. Sorry, yeah. That's right. See how quickly I forget. Anyways, we will talk with you all next week. I'll set up an announcement that our regular time is Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern time so that you don't have to think about when's the next event or when's the next episode. Thanks again for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Lei, I will talk with you on direct message.
All right, bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.